In 390 BC, Rome was still young, a city of ambition, not yet an empire, but from the north came an enemy they had never faced, the Gauls. Fierce warriors, painted for war, descended on Italy like a storm. At the River Allia, Roman legions broke and fled. The path to the city lay open. Soon, flames would rise above Rome itself. This was the night the eternal city nearly died. The Gauls were a Celtic people, restless and bold, migrating south from the Alps. To Rome, they were barbarians, wild, terrifying, unknown. But to their own, they were proud warriors, carrying iron swords and painted shields. Their leader, Brennus, was ruthless and cunning, his eyes set on Rome, not for glory but for plunder. For the first time, the young republic faced a force that did not seek negotiation, but the destruction of the city itself. The Romans marched out to meet them at the River Allia. Confident, yet unprepared, their lines were thin and scattered. The Gauls struck with speed and fury. Their war cries shattered the Roman ranks and panic spread. Soldiers fled in chaos, abandoning their standards, their comrades, even their honor. The Tiber ran red as men drowned in flight. The road to Rome lay open. The eternal city, unguarded, would soon feel the weight of Brennus's wrath. As the Gauls stormed the walls, Rome collapsed into terror. Houses were looted, temples desecrated, the Senate slain where they sat. Flames devoured the city, smoke darkened the skies. Yet atop the Capitoline Hill, a small garrison resisted, refusing to yield. Starving and surrounded, they prayed Rome itself would endure. But for the rest of the city, only ashes remained. For the first time in its history, Rome was broken, its survival uncertain. Legend tells of geese on the Capitoline who saved Rome. When Gauls tried to scale the cliffs at night, the sacred birds cried out, waking the defenders. A desperate counterattack drove the invaders back. It was not strength that spared Rome, but chance, a moment when even animals shaped destiny. Still, the siege dragged on, supplies ran out, hope dimmed, and the city seemed doomed. To survive, Romans would be forced to bargain with Brennus himself. At last, Brennus agreed to withdraw. For a price. The Romans brought gold to buy their freedom, yet even here humiliation struck. When the Romans protested the weight of the scales, Brennus threw his sword upon them, shouting, Victis! Woe to the vanquished! With those words, Rome paid its ransom, scarred in body and spirit. But the memory of fire and shame would harden the Republic, forging the steel of vengeance that would one day conquer the world. The sack of Rome left scars deeper than fire. Temples lay in ruins, families slaughtered, treasures plundered, yet the Romans who survived swore the city would not die. Brick by brick, they rebuilt. But with every stone, the memory of humiliation remained. Children grew up hearing tales of Brennus's sword on the scales. Rome had paid gold for survival, a wound to its pride that no rebuilding could erase. Vengeance became not just desire, but destiny. In the years that followed, fear of the Gauls haunted Rome. Every rumor of northern movement sent tremors through the Republic. Legions drilled harder, walls were strengthened, new tactics forged. Rome became obsessed with discipline. Cowardice at the Allia would never be repeated. In this crucible of shame, the Roman war machine was born, and though the Gauls had left with treasure, they had unknowingly given Rome something far greater, an unbreakable resolve to never fall again. Roman writers later turned the sack into legend. They painted Brennus as a barbarian brute, a symbol of chaos against order. They spoke of sacred geese, heroic stands, and divine warnings. Perhaps the stories were exaggerated, but the fear was real. The eternal city had nearly ceased to exist. That memory lingered in every Roman mind. It was not victory that defined Rome's rise, but survival through humiliation, and the promise that no enemy would ever leave it burning again. For centuries, the cry of Victis echoed through Roman history. Senators invoked it to rally troops, generals used it to inspire vengeance. Rome's wars against the Gauls became campaigns of retribution. Towns were burned, tribes crushed, entire peoples scattered. Each victory was not just conquest, it was repayment of a debt written in fire and gold. Rome turned its greatest shame into fuel until fear itself became their most powerful weapon. The sack of Rome was more than a battle. It was a rebirth. From ashes, the Republic learned that survival required iron, discipline, and vengeance. The Gauls had come as raiders, but left as the makers of Rome's destiny. One day, this city that had paid ransom in humiliation would dominate all of Italy, then the world. But the memory of 390 BC never faded. Rome would never forgive and never forget the night its heart was set aflame. Roman pride demanded vengeance. Generals like Camillus rose to legend, hailed as the second founder of Rome for rallying survivors. He rebuilt armies, reformed discipline, and struck back against enemies nearby. Though the scars of Brennus's sack could not be erased, Rome's leaders reframed it, not as defeat, but as a test. Out of ruin, they claimed, the gods had chosen Rome to rise stronger. Pain was rewritten into destiny, and the myth of resilience was born. The Gauls, meanwhile, faded into memory. They had plundered Rome, but could not hold it. To them, it was a raid. To Rome, it was apocalypse. Generations later, Roman armies marched north, crushing Celtic tribes with relentless fury. Villages were burned, warriors slaughtered, survivors enslaved. The sack of 390 BC became the justification for centuries of conquest. Rome was no longer the victim, it was the avenger. The debt of blood was repaid over and over again. Historians debate how much of the sack is legend and how much is fact. Did Brennus truly cry Victis? Did sacred geese really save the Capitoline? Or were these stories shaped by Roman pens to soften shame? Yet in history, perception matters as much as truth. The sack became a cautionary tale retold for centuries, a warning of what happens when vigilance fails, and a reminder of how close Rome came to extinction before its rise. The trauma of 390 BC shaped the Roman psyche. It bred suspicion of barbarians, obsession with walls, and reverence for discipline. Every campaign, every conquest carried echoes of that fire. Even when Rome stood as master of the Mediterranean, senators still recalled the night the Gauls entered the city. The Eternal City had nearly died in its infancy, and from that fear grew the ruthless empire that would rule the known world. The sack of Rome was not the end, but the beginning. A city humiliated rose to carve an empire of iron. From the cry of Victis to the ashes of temples, every scar became fuel for conquest. Rome learned that survival was greater than gold and vengeance stronger than defeat. The flames of 390 BC still burned in memory, and from them the Eternal City was reborn, destined never again to bow before its enemies. From ashes and humiliation, Rome found its destiny. The Gauls had come for plunder, but instead, they forged an empire's resolve. Woe to the vanquished became Rome's creed, a reminder that weakness brings ruin. The Eternal City would rise again, carrying fire not of destruction, but of conquest, and in its heart the memory of that night remained, the night Rome learned to never forgive and never forget.